Welcome to the 150th episode of the 100% podcast. Today, I'm joined by a brand new and special guest, Ben Coomber. Ben is an author. He is a nutritionist. He has been in the game of mindset, health, and coaching for 17 years. He is also the owner of Awesome Supplements, and this is going to be a fucking awesome episode. Welcome to the show, Ben Coomber.
Thank you for having me. 150, well done.
Thank you very much. Like I said, I had you eyed down or wrote down as a guest for a period of time. It took a little while to convince you to come on, but here you are for the 150th episode, and I really appreciate it.
Talking of percentages, and this being the 100% podcast, do you know that you're in the top 1% of podcasters by doing 150?
I knew that there was some stats. There's a huge stat around people that don't even make it past the 20th episode, right? But I didn't know that I was in the top 1% for reaching 150. So that's cool.
So if you reach over 21 episodes, you're in the top 1% because most people quit.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And I think the longevity and the things that I've learned from doing it have been great. And of course, when you get people like yourself, Paul Mort, Emma Story-Gordon on the show as well, it helps you grow, because I feel pressure today, right? You've got some reputation, you've been in the game a long time, and I want to make this a good experience for you as well as it is for me.
I'm sure it will be. Let's make magic happen.
Why awesome, Ben? Why awesome? Why was the word awesome chose?
So awesome for me is like an energetic thing. It's a way of life. And for me, it's not something that I stipulate someone lives in a certain way. It's something that you can define for yourself through your values, what you want out of life, like who you are as an individual. So awesome for me in a nutshell is being able to turn up every day with energy, with passion, with positivity, with excitement for your future, gratitude for your past, to be present in every moment. So it's literally a life force word. It's like, I feel awesome, and you're able to carry that into your life, and you're able to ultimately have a fucking good one.
Yeah, insane. I like it. And in terms of creating that awesome life, for me, I use the 100% life, the 100% podcast. It all links in, and this is why I invited you on. The morals and the values that you talk about, and having that awesome life, and trying to be as positive as you can towards people, and having an impact on people as well. It doesn't just come from deciding to wake up and being that way. There are things that you have to do, or that you do in your routine, to make sure that you feel awesome on a day-to-day basis. What would you say the key things that you do on a day-to-day basis to make you feel awesome are?
So sleep is number one, and feeling awesome. Like, it's really hard to get around like poor sleep. Second thing is managing effective nutrition on just like an energetic level. The third thing has to be, and I'm trying to think of like order of how it affects you, and in a kind of like a whole. So the third thing would probably be like purpose or purposefulness, like what you're doing, why you're doing it. Because if you go to work every day and do a job you don't like, then that's a big part of your life that you've got friction against. And then after that, I think there's huge benefits in, seeking adventure in life, staying fit, for both yourself, for your family, for longevity, for your confidence. So there'd be some of the big movers.
Amazing. And they all are mentioned in your book, How to Live an Awesome Life, when did you write that, Ben?
It came out January 2023.
And in terms of writing a book, how did you find the process? I know there are some challenges and it can be a bit sticky at times. How did you find the process of writing your own book?
Writing an actual book for me was very easy, because it felt like there was 17 years worth of experience, knowledge, coaching that I literally just wanted to distill. The hard bit was just making it coherent, simplifying your thoughts. Like, the editing process of writing a book is the really, really long bit, the refinement. But actually getting the ideas out, I just went on holiday twice. I did like a week's holiday and a 3-day holiday, and I wrote it 120,000 words in that period of time.
Wow. And the reason I say that it can be sticky and challenging, I've listened to people talk about it on podcasts, and my own coach, Paul Mort, is speaking of writing his own book as well. And there's a lot of talk around how focused you have to be and the concentration that you need to put in to be able to put your words down. I know what I'm like, for example, when I write in long form, I can tend, if I was to talk about protein, for example, I'd go on a little tangent and forget where I was kind of writing around the point that I was trying to make to then come back to it. Did you ever have any trouble with that? Like, what was the most challenging part for you?
Being succinct, exactly what you've said. So that's the power of a good editor, and that's the power of building the team around you to get a fantastic outcome. So in any area of life, whether we're talking about our career, our health, family, anything, the more people you can build around you to bring your level of excellence up is a beneficial thing. So I initially wrote 120,000 words, and my editor got it down to 81,000. And when I read it back, I was like, oh, wow, like I actually sound good. I sound like I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So yeah, brevity is a problem. And I think anyone that's passionate about a topic usually struggles with brevity, because, you know, you start to wrap emotion and storytelling into it and stuff. So it's a real skill to learn over time to say what you want to say in as few words as possible.
Yeah, and the biggest way to learn that you're not very good at getting to the point quick is with a 90-second Instagram reel, right? Trying to get all of your information you're trying to put across, like something that I'm really, really mindful of, that when I'm recording myself talking, I'm like, this has got to be quick. Otherwise, when you go to edit the reel, you're just not going to have enough time to get all of the point you're trying to make into that one video.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you.
In terms of the fact around social media and stuff, obviously you've been in the game of mindset, health and fitness now for 17 years, as I introduced on the start of the podcast. What have been the biggest changes in the industry that you've noticed?
For social media?
In general, all through the 17 years that you've been in the game.
Well, I think a really positive one over my evolution of being in this space is it becoming as a whole more evidence-based, and people respecting the evidence more, people calling out bullshit. Like, some people don't like people being called out, but the reality is, if people aren't held to account of the information that they give, then they're going to keep giving out misinformation. And we all know we're in a sea of misinformation online. Most people that you speak to that are struggling say, I don't really get a coherent answer. If I Google how to lose weight, there's a lot of different answers. We know what initiates weight loss, but there's many different methods, and that's where the confusion lies. So a big positive is more evidence-based nutrition. Same in kind of the realm of training. I think lockdown blew up like mental health awareness, which I think was a really positive thing and a very much a needed thing. We've got people talking more. I still think we've got a way to go. I think mental health it's too like light touch, and then there's this kind of like middle ground that people aren't getting through to get to kind of like the deep work that they need to do. And I think there's a lot of exploration and techniques that need to come to the fore, and people need to explore to actually allow themselves to do the deep work to solve their mental health issues. They would probably be like the big ones that stick out to me kind of right now. I personally love the fact that there is a huge audience still for long form content. Yes, we live in a world of like clickbait, 90-second reels, but there's huge podcasters out there, like a friend of mine, Chris Williamson. He's got a huge podcast, Modern Wisdom, loads of people. He's doing long form right, like in a very highly executed way. And people are listening to 3-hour shows, same with Joe Rogan. So I like the fact that there remains an appetite for long form, and we haven't all just reduced ourselves to learning everything in 90 seconds, because you don't get context, you don't get the story behind it, you don't get the depth, and that needs to stay and grow.
I completely agree with you. And Chris Williamson's pod and Joe Rogan's are amazing within their own rights, with the guests that they have on and the things that you can learn from them. And the one thing that, of course, they've both got their own niches, right? And Chris is completely playing on the fact of modern wisdom. I think it really fits in with the audience that he's trying to impact, but also I believe that he's reaching maybe an audience that he never thought that he would, with regards to the fact that he was on Love Island, and then now he's completely almost like reformed his life to be this guy who's trying to put across, or is putting across, a sense of complete wisdom, or a growth of wisdom, which is therefore impacting people like myself to go out there and become the best people or best person that I can possibly be as well. But when it comes to the longer form content, you are finding now though that I mean, even if I look at the real numbers that I release and the viewing figures on them, you'll find the ones that are 10 seconds will get viewed more than the ones that even reach the 90 seconds. It's quite fascinating to see how that impacts the viewing audience, let's just say.
Yeah, well, it's a commitment thing as well. If I see that it's very quick, I might commit to it. You know, and even with long form, like you have to really invest in a guest to be like, oh, do I want to spend 3 hours listening to this thing? Who's the guest? So you almost have to have a big guest to really allow that commitment from the audience member. And that's rational. That's just human behavior.
Yeah, 100%. And with regards to long form content and making sure that the narrative fits in with things that are going to help people, not long ago you released a video that did pretty well yourself, but in terms of, it wasn't necessarily clickbait content, it was a real open, genuine letter to Steven Bartlett, who, when you're sat on the right side of the fence in the fitness industry, if I don't mind calling it that, the side of the fence that has morals and value, Steven Bartlett's message doesn't quite hit the point. And I could tell you were insanely passionate about putting your point across to Steven in his Diary of a CEO podcast.
Yeah, well, coming back to my earlier point around evidence-based information, I felt that Steven then started to re-proliferate clickbait, non-evidence-based nutrition advice, especially nutrition, into the social media sphere. And I suppose I wanted to do my bit to hold him to account. And I've previously experienced that kind of stuff where people have like called me out and stuff. And actually, I am better for it as a result. I looked at myself and I said, well, actually, I need to maybe like reframe how I'm approaching this. I maybe need to consider that there's a certain audience that may not have the experience or privilege or whatever of compared to my background. And then I was misaligned with some of the evidence and unaware of some stuff. So I think it's actually an opportunity for people to grow if they're willing to take that criticism on board. And we should always seek, constructive criticism. And hopefully I was constructive in giving that criticism. But for someone that's that big with that much power, not to have these kind of stop checks in place where it's like, hang on, are we doing the right thing by here? Are we moving society forward? Or are we, going backwards to, a more Neanderthal state? And as soon as I sort of start to see that evolve, I was like, you are creating more confusion in the world of nutrition that we've been working really hard to create clarity on. And the problem is I looked at the comment section of the Lane Norton podcast he did, and it was interesting, and you could see how much of an echo chamber he's created around nutrition misinformation, because the comment section was all like, we all know calories, aren't a thing. We all know you've got to like eat clean or go keto or fast or whatever. And I just thought, wow, that's what we're dealing with. We've got to try and break that echo chamber, which is extremely difficult, re-educate people. But then the next week, there's another guest sort of flying in the face of, what has been kind of said and agreed upon. So that's my frustration, that when I compare him to someone like Chris Williamson's show, and I can imagine you're the same, and I tried to be the same when I was a podcaster, the conversation evolves and the information gets stacked to then a coherent message. Whereas Steven's shows like one message one week, polar opposite the next week, and then people are sitting there going, how do I make sense of that? And it's because Steven isn't doing the job of making sense of the information. He's just doing an interview and publicizing information. And for me, that is not acting with integrity in the podcast space.
I 1,000,000% agree with you. I was going to say the same kind of thing. It's almost like when it comes to my show, Chris Williamson's show, it's like it is genuine episodes. They do, obviously, every week I'll speak to somebody different about something different, but it's around the same kind of message: how to get 100% out of your life, what you have to do, what do you do to look after yourself to get that person, to get that version of you out. That'll be something similar. And Chris Williamson's the same. How did you become modern? What are the messages that you'd share with the world to make sure that you can become wise and get better and become a better person? Whereas Steven Bartlett's show is almost like it's individual movies with a different narrative every week. It's like it's not episodes. It's this person's going to say this. And you know what? Like, I may be completely wrong, but I would be surprised if he even generated the questions to ask as well. I believe that they're set up for clickbait material so that his viewership or comment section or whatever can go through the roof. I mean, it may be a bit of an outside guess, but when you look at the reels that are released, like you said in your video around, it's almost like the message that's going to get the biggest reaction is used, whether there be integrity and value behind that or not. It doesn't matter, because they've got the answer they want that's going to get the biggest response or the biggest hit rate on viewership and listenership.
Which is a shame, but hopefully if more people keep saying it, then something changes.
Yeah. And I said to you before the show, I found out something in my research around you that I didn't know, is that you had your own podcast episode, which would have been 685. Was that what you said? 685 episodes deep. Yeah. What were the things that you loved around podcasting? And if you don't mind me asking, what was the reason that you stopped running your show in the end?
I stopped running the show because I was mentally and emotionally in a very bad place, and I didn't have the capacity to deliver to my audience. And I'd already been delivering a show to my audience in a bad place, and I could see the show was deteriorating, and I just wasn't bringing myself to it. So I just stepped away. And luckily, it was coming up to the 10-year mark of doing my show, and it felt like a really honorable place to finish, that I'd done 10 years of podcasting. You know, the beautiful thing about podcasting is you get to have great conversations with great people. So I learned a lot as an individual. I grew a lot as an individual. I was able to create a great network. I was able to, kind of grow my own thoughts and profile and stuff. So it's a beautiful experience to be able to kind of talk to people on a high level and explore, topics that you're passionate about. Like for you, you're passionate about living life at 100%. You've now talked to 150 people or explored that many conversations around it. It's enriched your understanding of it. It's given you more perspective. It's made you better at what you do. So it's a very, very rewarding journey.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love it. And I think it's important. Again, I always reiterate the message. People do ask, oh, is this a full-time thing? Do you get paid for it, etc.? At the moment, touch wood, no, I don't. But I absolutely love it. And obviously, when I speak to people who give me new insights, give me some information that I may not have known before, or give me just a new outlook on life, it makes it completely worth it. Again, I want to just throw back a little bit. We spoke about the growth that you've seen, or the changes that you've seen within the industry over the last 17 years. And you said around mental health and around the things that we can do to support our mental health and physical health, I believe as well, is there's a middle ground that's being missed in terms of the narrative around mental health. Do you think that mental health is spoken about enough, but it's the message of how to improve it isn't spoken about more?
Well, it's talked about a lot, I think. A lot of people I see are talking about it. But what I mean by the middle ground is, for me, there's there's not enough people exploring the tools to drop through the middle part of the journey to the real deep work. So top level with mental health, you've got the real kind of basic key tools, which are get really good sleep, get exercise, eat well, surround yourself with positive people. They're all things that you should be doing. But a lot of people that struggle with their mental health have past trauma. They've been in abusive relationships. They've been in toxic relationships. They've been in toxic workplaces. They're in unsupportive environments. To move into a supportive one doesn't necessarily fix anything, because there's already a lot of programmatic behavior and belief systems as a result of that kind of environment. So you can do all of that work and feel better and have a better level of mental health. But if you don't work through trauma, if you don't address belief systems that are faulty, if you don't actually do that work, then you're never really ever going to achieve a state of very good mental health. I would say I have a very good state of mental health, but I've had to do a lot of work to get through that middle ground where I'm not just managing it. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to get to a place where, oh, mentally I am better, but I have to do all these things to manage it. What we want to do is move through that, and that actually we are a very well-adjusted, mentally balanced, calm, present individual, but you've got to work through the dark stuff to kind of get there. And some of the tools that people need to use do take quite a long time. It's like going to the gym. Like if you wanted to build a stone of muscle, you're not going to do it in 3 months, but you might do it in 18 months. And it's the same with your mental health. Like it's not, you don't go to therapy for 4 sessions and fix it all. Actually, you kind of had to dip into it for quite a while. So there's been some really powerful things that I've done to explore my mental health. And I would hand on heart not be where I am today if I hadn't kept knocking on the door of like, what's next? How do I go deeper? How critical am I willing to look at myself and everything that makes up me as a character, as a human? And that's the real hard part of challenging where you're at with your mental health, is we have to look at ourselves with such a high level of self-awareness that it makes you feel incredibly comfortable, because you have to admit to things or admit things about yourself that you do not like. But to change that, you have to identify the fact that I do not like that about myself, and I am now willing to make changes to reprogram that behavior. And I've done that with loads of things in my life, and I'm so much better for it. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah, it makes total sense. What are some of the tools that you've used during your experience of improving your own mental health and your own growth?
Yeah, so a lot of reading, of course, a lot of knowledge work, and looking actually at the science of like the brain and psychology. I think it's important to really start to underpin that growth journey in terms of like how the brain works, and a little bit of science and stuff. A lot of philosophy around meditation and mindfulness. For me, in my opinion, from what I've experienced, if you try and do meditation without understanding what meditation is trying to allow you to actually achieve, then it's very hard to actually see the true benefit of meditation. Now, when we talk about meditation, there's loads of different techniques that you can use, and I implore people to try a lot of different ways to achieve what you might, frame a meditative state or a meditative experience. And within that, what we're ultimately trying to do is achieve a very healthy state of mindfulness about ourself and our experience within our own lives, and how that adjusts our perspective of our own consciousness. So to do that, I've done a lot of like guided meditation, unguided meditation. I think some of the most powerful stuff that I've done is self and guided breath work. I think breath work is hugely underrated, and that's a frustration of mine with the proliferation of Wim Hof's movement, is that so many people are focusing on the transactional ice bath process, which is quick and easy, feel great, jump out the ice bath, I've got a nice buzz on. But Wim Hof is actually like, if you look at his teaching, it's like, do the deep work. Like the ice bath's cool, but do the deep work, do the breath work, do the introspection. And that's where the beauty is. Like, doing 5 rounds of Wim Hof breathing and learning how to get really deep is so powerful. I've also explored working, or currently I've literally, after this podcast, I'm going to my 13th session with what I would describe as an energy healer. This woman's like incredible. She uses like trauma release therapy, sound therapy, guided meditation, all sorts of technique to guide you through past life, current life, future life, your belief systems, trauma that you've had. And that's been probably the most life-changing work I've ever done in my life, working with this individual. And then I've also explored like other things that might be indirectly attached to it, like acupuncture and stuff. And then I'm not afraid to say that I've used psychedelics in that process as well.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's so important that all of these avenues are explored and spoken about as well, because one thing I will say, actually, I saw on your story you supporting acupuncture, and it's fun. It is interesting, and it's almost humorous, and sometimes the ways that things come around in cycles with regards to fads. And the latest one, as you've already mentioned, is around ice baths. Everybody wants an ice bath. Everybody wants to get cold to feel that buzz, like you say. And let's go with 10 years ago, acupuncture was something that was very much on the forefront of the health and fitness and well-being mind space. And then it took a little bit of a back turn. So I'd like to just tap into your brain around acupuncture and why you believe that it is beneficial.
For me, it's not belief. There's a good amount of evidence behind it. It's not a woo-woo practice. It is an evidence-based practice. You know, there's systems that you have to respect that have been used for like thousands of generations. Like they've been using acupuncture for a very, 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 very long time. And I've then obviously explored that, and N=1 got very positive experiences from it. So when I was suffering with long COVID, I used to use it from an energetic perspective, like to try and help calm my nervous system. And a lot of the research seems to point to it being a very positive way to calm various systems in the body and allow them to kind of relax. And part of that will be because the modern world, I would say, is in a productivity pandemic, in that we're all trying to do too much in our lives. There's not enough space and downtime. There's not enough silence. There's not enough introspection, because we're all connected in some way. We're either always listening to something, watching something, talking to someone, on an email. Like our brains are working 16 hours that it's awake. And I just don't think that's a healthy thing anymore, from what I've observed in myself and a lot of other people. And it's just a lot to keep up with. Like, and we would raise the question, why are we keeping up with it all? So back to acupuncture. Yeah, good science, had a lot of positive experience. And I think if you find a good practitioner, they're usually someone that's quite well versed in holistic health as a whole, and can be quite often a very good guide on your journey.
Yeah, amazing. And it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on it. And of course, like when you look at even the ice bath stuff, you can go back centuries and see evidence that like monks from the Middle East or from Asia, would be able to, they were practicing that to regulate their breath and almost counteract the negative feelings that they would have been experiencing at the time, which I think is, it goes to show that actually like what's been done for a long time normally does have its place in the modern world. The same for meditation as well, which I think is one of those subjects that if you speak to 90% of people around and you ask why maybe they don't include some kind of meditation in their day-to-day life, if they're stressed or they feel like they've got too much going on or they're overwhelmed, they'd say, oh, it's because I can't get my brain to stop thinking. And that's where you say it's really important to go and look at why you meditate. It's not around stopping thoughts. It's almost around allowing the experience of those thoughts to happen without
judgment.
Yeah. And when I look back at my own worst like mental health state, when I had my mental breakdown, it was almost like I was playing whack-a-mole with my thought process and how I was thinking. If there was a thought that came up around negativity and self-doubt or a challenge, it would be like I'd get frustrated because I was thinking negatively. And then that almost creates that resistance and makes you think those thoughts more, which is where meditation came in for me to help and regulate and realize that, hold on, these thoughts are there, but you don't need to react to them in the way that you are. It's around being calm around those thoughts and letting it go by just so you can get to the next one. Because of course we have so many different 1,000 thoughts a day that they come and they go. And I think that's what's important for me, the message around meditation that people can take from it is, what other things do you do, Ben, that make you grounded and keep you present with the world rather than getting sucked into that 16 hours of busyness?
Yeah. Before I answer that question,
go on.
I just want to highlight the fact that's why I feel it's important to learn the philosophy behind meditation, because so many people just try and do it and then they don't get it and then they struggle. And it's important to understand why you're doing it and the states that you're trying to achieve. And like you say, you allow thoughts to come, you allow thoughts to go, you don't judge them, they're just part of your conscious experience. And another little, here's a theory on ice baths. You know, we talk about it being like a tool and stuff, and that, oh, if you think back 1,000 years ago or whatever, well, before hot water, that's all we had, cold water. So every day we would have a cold bath, a cold shower, a cold splash, a cold whatever. So actually, what we're now doing is we're now re-injecting something that we've historically done for hundreds of thousands of years to clean ourselves. And there's probably, we're just now re-experiencing that physiological reaction and going, wow, it feels absolutely great to, you know, dangle my nuts in cold water. And it's like, but we've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. We're just getting back to being like a Neanderthal again.
Yeah, very, very true. I hadn't actually thought of it that way until you said so. Yeah, no, very, very valid point. And in some ways, very, very true.
So you asked the question around like keeping present in what is a very busy world. So for me, I really try and re-emphasize constantly around just consciously slowing down. I'm someone that programmed their body and brain to move more and do it quickly so I could achieve more in my life. Now that served me very well in my 20s when I was young, resilient, like could do all those things. But as I came into my 30s, my body couldn't really keep up the pace. I hardwired my central nervous system to just be like, go, 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 go. And actually learning to slow down as someone that's programmed their body and mind to do that, has got ADHD and is just generally kind of a go-getter, it's been extremely difficult. So I have a lot of conscious moments in my day where I'm just like, stop, take a breath and do this next thing 25% slower. And life will remind me when I'm not doing that. Like at the gym 3 days ago, I was trying to do too much. I was like holding my phone, trying to grab my bag, reply to a text, like that classic, like 4 things at once getting out your car. And I dropped my AirPods case down the drain, lost it, gone. And I just stood there and laughed. And I was like, that's the world telling you to slow the fuck down, because you will carry that energy into whatever you're doing for maybe even the rest of the day. And you know what happens when we approach things too quickly? We don't think of the angles, we react too quickly, we're not calm, we're not considered, we're not empathetic. So I'm not going to say like, and it depends on people's interpretation of calm. I think being calm is a very important life skill because you see the world for what it is better. You don't have tunnel vision. You're not just going and reacting, which so many people do. People are going about their day with their head down, especially when you spend half of it looking at our phones. So I take real moments. I have coaches in my life that kind of make sure I'm slowing down, and we use like proactive techniques. So I told you after this podcast, I'm going to see my energy healer for a session. I do breath work. So I do the Wim Hof usually like once a week. Before I go to bed, so before I read, I have like 5 or 10 minutes where I just kind of talk to myself, because I can have a very busy brain. And if I don't try and put down on my thoughts before bed, my brain can be very active. So I'll almost have a chat with myself to get all of those conversations like out in the open and kind of discussed and kind of leave them. And then I sort of read my book. Sleeping's really important because, we're just not good when we don't sleep properly. I find I have a much improved sense of confidence, resilience, positivity when I exercise, and more so weight training. For me, really, really important. And then realizing that all the best things in life are in the things that are immediately around you, like your family, the moments with your children, shared experiences, connection. And then the last thing would be getting out in nature, which is one thing I'm constantly saying to myself, I'd love to get outside more, but I've built a business where I'm on my laptop a lot, so it can be quite difficult to actually address that.
Yeah, I mean, as much as you're way more established, you've got your own supplements company and stuff, I completely agree, especially when it comes to making videos and speaking to clients and all of those kind of things. I completely get you. One of my favorite things to do is go and explore the coast down where I live. I'm an hour away from Dorset, the beautiful scenes of Dorset, and it's incredible. And I'm always like, every week, well, I'm just going to get down the beach and then lose that moment. But then when you get there, seeing those things and being outside in nature, wherever it is that you go as well, it just brings you that sense of everything's way bigger than what you're focused on right now. And when you're like Dorset, where I tend to go for my walks, nothing makes you more present than some of those sides of those cliffs and digging your feet in to get up them. But then you look around and you go, wow, this is insane, it's so worth it. And I do believe that there's a place for that to be said more. Again, it's more of a vitamin than it is a cure to make people's mental health better as a collective across the country or across the world. But being present in nature and taking yourself outside in sunlight in a place where you feel like you are small in terms of a human being on the planet, I think it can have a real good impact on how we feel and how we act in that day and how we feel moving forward as well.
Yeah, and we shouldn't need science to back this up, but there's loads of science to say that getting out in nature is incredibly powerful. And like I have an Oura ring, very, very proud owner. I think it's a great bit of kit. And my best scores in terms of like heart rate, blood pressure, stress status, the lowest scores always when I've been out in nature. I look at my thing and it's like really low, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've just like been to the forest with the kids or whatever. It's every time.
There you go. Evidence backs it up, right? In terms of I keep referring back to it because it is, I love the experience that you have, Ben, and it comes out insanely well, I will say, on the show already. But within the 17 years, you must have had your own challenges in terms of growing your business with regards to awesome supplements, and you were a coach yourself. What are the things that you have learned about you across those 17 years when it has come to maybe financial struggles, or you have thought that your business isn't quite taking off and all of those things? What is it that you've resorted back to within yourself that's made you carry on for this amount of time?
So there's two questions there. What have I learned about myself and what has allowed me to kind of like carry on? So, yeah, lots of struggles business-wise, nearly been bankrupt twice, been very low kind of like financially and had to kind of get myself out of it. I think the thing that I always fall back on is, I've been in sticky situations before and I've figured it out. And if you've got the willingness to figure it out, ask for help, and a lot of people don't ask for help soon enough or quick enough, then you'll figure it out and you'll find a way. There's literally always a way. And sometimes the way is that you've got to quit quickly and move on quickly. And we try and hold on kind of like too much. And, then the situation becomes harder to actually kind of deal with and stuff. But when I was very early on in my career, I had an insatiable appetite for reading autobiographies. So right back when Dragon's Den first started and Richard Branson was very much a talked about name, I started to read books like Richard Branson's autobiography, Peter Jones's autobiography, Deborah Meaden. And what I read in those books was about struggle, the adversity, working through it, and what happened on the other side. So in my head, I had all these, like, let's just say 50 stories of amazing people where I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, they found a way. And you see these beautiful, heartwarming stories of how they've, worked through things. And that's the beautiful power of podcasting, because so many people share such incredible stories on podcasts that should bring us strength to conquer those challenges and actually rise above it. So for me, I think one of the things I've learned about myself is actually there's a lot of beauty in having patience, even in adversity. Because if you try and push hard, sometimes you don't see all the angles. And this is why, surrounding yourself with good people, allowing them to like stress test your thinking and your ideas and your kind of approach and stuff is really important. Because again, we have biases, we have beliefs, we have an overt sense of misaligned confidence sometimes in how a situation is going to pan out. And taking a little bit of time to just sit on things and stress test it, not sit on it long enough that you don't do it, but sit on it long enough that you stress test it. And then you're like, right, I think we've got it now. Right, let's go and execute on the plan. So it's kind of a combination of like those things and a doggedness inside that I think over time, once you've been in business long enough, like it's almost part of your identity. You're not going to give up. You're just going to find a different way. You're just going to, you're going to keep going, like, because the thought of going backwards and having to just like find a job or whatever, for me would be like, well, that's just not going to happen. And sometimes that should be the things that happen, and that's absolutely fine. Like becoming a parent, I think about it a bit differently now, because as a number one thing with as a parent, you kind of seek security and stability for your kind of family and your kids. So I would get why anyone that's potentially in business and has got a family, it's like, do you know what? I'm just going to get a job. I'm going to create stability. I'm going to create a bit of breathing room for a year or two, and then, we'll kind of rethink things. And I think that's perfectly, that's a great plan if it's the plan that you want to execute on. But yeah, so learning about myself, younger, The younger Ben would have been way more narcissistic, way more selfish, think he was right, far too much of the time, be led by ego too much. And all of those things serve you well in many areas of your life, but become toxic and a sort of dark side of your character if you don't have good enough people to roughen out your edges. So if you have a team, for example, you want people to be able to be empowered to say, well, I think you're actually wrong there, and this is the evidence as to why I think you're wrong. And you have to have the humility to look at yourself and go, do you know, I think you're right. Actually, you've pointed out a blind spot. Kind of thank you very much. And yeah, I would say I've really rounded out those character traits through the process that I've been on over the last couple of years. I'm very proud of myself that I've been able to look at myself and say, I don't like that about myself. I want to change that because I don't think that's, healthy for my kids to learn off me, for example, or it's not healthy for the future of my business to kind of behave and act in that way.
Amazing. I completely agree as well. I believe that that's one of the areas that I think as a man, it can be one of the toughest things to do, is realize that a lot of your actions and thoughts and the way that you deal with people can be done with your ego and maybe with a little bit of like a narcissistic tendency as well. Because I've been there. It's only when you start questioning, okay, is this actually how I really want to bring myself to the table with these people? And you have a little look at the way you maybe walk away from a conversation one day and you're like, shit, did I just behave that way? Did I just speak to that person in that way? Did I shut that person down like that way? And then you realize, and I think it takes a real intricate and in-depth look at yourself to pick up on those things, because I'm sure you've had conversations, Ben, as well in the past with friends, family, people outside of your network, whoever, where they label a potential negative tendency within themselves, something that they don't like, and they just say, oh yeah, but that's just me. You maybe point them down the direction of therapy to help them with it, or breath work to help with it, meditation to help with it. But then it's like a shutdown of, yeah, I could, but it's just something about me that's going to stay with me forever. And I think that's the biggest challenge in the message with regards to self-development, growth, and all those things that should be put out more, is that all of these intrusive, inverted thoughts that you have and the things that you come out with can be changed and can be worked on if you give it time.
Yeah, I believe everything can be changed from what I've experienced, and it's not to say everything happens quickly. I think the issue is it obviously takes a lot of work to change some of these things in time, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. A lot of people don't see it as enough of a problem to do it because their environment around them has adapted to the way that they behave. So, for example, I know that John is going to react like this because he's a bit of a hothead. So I adapt to him being a hothead, and that is less of a problem because I've adapted to, John's behavior, for example. But John has to stand back and go, well, is that a behavior that I actually want around my kids, as around my colleagues, all the rest of it? The reality is we're on this planet for a long time. Like, I'm only 37. I've got a long way to go ahead of me. Do I want to spend another 30 years being an out-and-out narcissist, being too selfish, not thinking of other people, etc., etc.? No, I don't. So I made an effort to correct those behaviors because I don't want to, express those behaviors in the way that I was for the next 30, 40, 50 years, because that's going to have a very profound impact on my life, my children's life, my business's life, etc. And I'm willing to do the work to work through it.
I have spoke about this recently on the pod as well, Ben, as regards to the selfishness element of life. And I do believe personally, this could be a conversation, you may challenge me on it as well, actually, which could be cool. But I do believe that it's important that there is an element around that you do maintain some selfishness in your life, because people I've worked with, I'm sure the people that you worked with before as well in the past, have put other people first, and then they find that their mental health and their physical health is on the decline, or has declined to the point where they've reached out for help, right? And I do believe that there's a huge balance to be had. Nobody wants to be selfish in the extent that you're putting your thoughts, or you're trying to put your thoughts before others. And I've done that in the past, and it's not led me into good situations. But when it comes to your physical and mental health, there are things that you do need to be selfish around to maintain, to ensure that you can be your best for other people as well. Do you find that's the situation?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think maybe there's a reframing that has to happen. So for me to be adherent to going to bed on time, to going and seeking some fitness, some eating well, is that selfish or is that self-love? And that I'm respecting myself to have those behaviors to look after myself. And those can very healthily integrate into lots of other things. So like you've just said, and that was a great framing of like putting your thoughts above others. Like if you're in a group environment, someone that's quite selfish will be thinking that their thought or process or idea has more validity over other people because your self-interest is more important than the interest of other people, rather than collaborating to get the kind of most ideal outcome. So for me, a lot of the ways where I would potentially be selfish and it would be negative to my family environment is that I would be thinking way too much about like what I wanted to achieve in a day or do in a day. Whereas I've got to think about my needs, children's needs, wife's needs, maybe other family members' needs, and my needs are not going to get met in some of the things that I might have wanted to do. But that is the reality of the life that I have. And, you know, I'm not going to say the sacrifices you make, the kind of, the width of all the different things that have to be in your life. You just allow the opportunity there. And yeah, you do have to be selfish to an extent. And that's why I think relationships have to work, and they will probably, for most people, work in that way. Is that, for example, I would naturally think more about kind of, you know, being strict with bedtime, being strict with food, like actually having those routines and stuff really embedded. Whereas my wife, on the other hand, would not, but would be more giving and caring and nourishing in kind of like the family environment. But then together, we come together and we have a great middle, we work together on it, and those kind of character traits, you know, collide in a very positive way. So yeah, you've got to be selfish to your wants and desires. Like, you know, you shouldn't accept doing a poor job or a job that you don't enjoy because of, you know, just the status quo in your environment. You should be selfish and say, actually, no, I want to do a job that I love and I get paid well for and I'm respected in and I feel like a team player, etc. So yeah, I think defining some of those terms can be good for people.
Yeah, amazing. I completely agree. Ben, I want to take the subject onto probably what is your speciality and now one of the main parts of your business and your brand as well, which is Awesome Supplements. Tell us about Awesome Supplements. Why did you create Awesome Supplements, and why do you think that it is one of the best supplement brandings and products on the market?
So I created Awesome Supplements because I, at the time, was very frustrated with the supplement market. Felt it was very dishonest. There was a lot of products being sold that didn't really work, didn't have a lot of evidence behind it, weren't dosed effectively. And I was working with a supplement company, kind of fell out with them because they were doing a lot of stuff I didn't agree with. And in kind of, I suppose, my naivety, I was like, how hard can it be to set up a supplement company? So we started to play around with the idea, had a little bit of money from an existing profitable company. So I, you know, chucked about 120 grand in, thought, right, let's have a go. Let's, you know, start designing products. Let's look at the evidence. And for me, I just wanted to do three things really simply. I wanted to follow the available evidence and dose it accordingly. I wanted to make everything really simple to use and the journey that you're going on easy to incorporate supplements into. And then I wanted everything to taste awesome. And that was it. And it sounds like a really simple proposition, but for me, a lot of companies were getting that wrong. And that's how it was born. And that was nearly 8 years ago. We're still, you know, around, we're still going strong. Yeah, I love the space. It's an interesting business. It's a very hard business. Running a products company is extremely different to a service-based company. But yeah, it's I think the most awesome supplement company in the world.
Yeah, insane. I will openly back Ben up here. I did get lured into trying the hydrate and carb duo. And I got the watermelon flavored hydration. What's the actual name of it? It's Awesome Hydration, right? And
Awesome Hydrate.
Awesome Hydrate, yeah. And the watermelon flavor is unreal. It is legitimately so good. And whilst I've been training for the London Marathon over the last, since January, the duo of having the carb mix as well, either pre or after a run, and having the hydration before the run as well, has really helped. I did speak to you on a voice note around my cramping tendencies, and having the 1,500 mg sodium, which I do get from bloody hell, I've forgotten their company name. But anyway, we won't mention them because we're talking about awesome supplements right now. And having the Awesome Hydrate as well has genuinely, throughout all of my long runs and all of my training, touch wood, the runs on Sunday, I won't experience cramp during this whole training and event block. So yeah, I have to back it up. It's a great product. And I'm sure that all the other ones are just as good.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of supplements and nutrition, there are still things, of course, that I'm learning. I'm very much new to the game compared to you, way more experienced than me. But what are the things that you see people commonly get wrong with supplementation specifically? And then we'll move on to nutrition shortly.
Yeah, so I think supplements, I think people very easily buy into claims of supplements, and that's largely through lack of time, and over trust sometimes of maybe people online. So if an influencer you see online speaks really confidently about something and they've taken it and they've got X result, then you might be like, oh, okay, I'll buy it. But not maybe do the full amount of research and learn that actually the product they're taking is like, it's not great. It's not that maybe that product didn't work or can't work, but actually the brand, the ingredients, not very good. A product or a compound that springs to mind is turmeric. Huge amount of people take it for joint health. But turmeric, you're basically taking curry powder. What you want is the active ingredient curcumin. So you'll see these people selling turmeric. Seems very cheap, but actually you are just taking a pill of curry powder. You want to be taking the evidence-based dose of curcumin at 1,500 milligrams, not 1,500 milligrams of turmeric. So I think we believe too easily. There's a very small amount of supplements that, really do anything for the large majority of people. They would be some of the key vitamins and minerals. They would be omega-3. Protein supplement can be helpful for a lot of people because a lot of people can struggle to get a good amount of protein in the diet. We know how valuable it is. A lot of people will quite often struggle with breakfast as well, or the speed that they want to have breakfast at. So protein powder can be, quite helpful in that domain. If you're training, you've got creatine, hydration or minerals, electrolytes, and you've got kind of carb powder. And then if you want to venture into kind of the world of like pre-workouts or ergogenics, you've got kind of other power compounds that you can help to kind of boost performance. Then on the health sort of specialism side, the slightly more niche, where you're actually trying to take something to achieve something beyond a state of well-being. You could look at collagen. You've got curcumin for joint health. There's some adaptogens that are showing some like okay research. More and more information is coming out on kind of like mushrooms and stuff. So the list is relatively short compared to the amount of supplements out there being advertised and sold to us.
Yeah, that's one thing that seems to be grabbing the headlines at the moment, isn't it? The microdosing of mushrooms. What evidence are you seeing at the moment that's backing it as a good thing for us to be doing?
Well, I think we want to, again, define that a little bit more because, mushrooms is a broad category. There's a lot of supplements within that we are researching for various different things. So some mushrooms seem to be having short and long-term cognitive benefits. Some are showing good benefits to the central nervous system and the hormonal system. So just saying mushrooms or just saying adaptogens is sort of almost too colloquial a term for people to then go away and actually action on that information. And then when you're talking about microdosing mushrooms, you're generally talking about the psychoactive components of mushrooms, which again is a very different thing. That's generally more of a kind of a brain state. A lot of people are using it to achieve different brain states, creative states, and also work through kind of emotional kind of blockages and stuff from, my experience, understanding of it, and, a lot of people that I know that kind of work within that or use it. So yeah, it's very important to define terms. And I think that's a really important thing to do. It's like in the world of nutrition, as a different example, people use the term processed food all the time and say, oh, it's a bad thing. I'm like, hang on a second. Processed food encapsulates probably 80% of the supermarket shelves. It's too broad a term. Like a tomato sauce that you might use in a bolognese, you'd call processed, but Cheerios, whatever, that are pink in a box, you would class that as processed as well. They're two very different foods that have had a lot more maybe added and whatnot. So for me, it's really important to define terms, what people mean, why people are looking to take something, and what they expect to achieve by taking it.
Perfect. Yeah, I completely. And you know what? I don't mind even saying this on the pod. When you speak to an expert in the field, which is of course what you are in the nutrition and supplement space, you ask a question and you think, yeah, that was broad. So lesson learned, Harry. Be more specific next time. But no, completely understand the point. And you're so right with regards to the. It's even something that I've caught myself with recently. Is this whole processed foods thing? I'm almost, because there's a lot of narrative around it, and of course, like when you click on something on Instagram, it then pops up on your Facebook, and then you have another article to read. The terminology of processed food can be, as you say, linked to so many things. But in the world of supplements and in the world of training and mindset and health in general, I go by, it may be a bit oversimplified, but I go by the mantra of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So for me personally, over the last 3 months, I've been training for the marathon. I've got stronger, my body fat's gone down, and my muscle mass has gone up, right? Those were the things that I was trying to do. I was trying to be as hybrid as I possibly could be over this quarter of the year, and it's worked. And then you start questioning yourself, should I be eating this? Should I be buying that? Should I take this supplement, blah, blah, blah. But actually, if you look at the evidence, which is always important when it comes to science and ourselves as well, I'm clearly doing the right things. So actually, there is a place to say that sometimes all of these narratives, and you can almost have too much information. And that's probably the challenge or the struggle with social media sometimes, is there is sometimes too much information.
Yeah, so off the bat, if people want a good resource to go away with, there's a website called examine.com. It's probably one of the most friendliest places to go in and say omega-3, and it will tell you the research on omega-3 or creatine. So that's a good thing to remember, examine.com. Second to that, critical thinking is really important. So we can quite often get easily sold into the desire to achieve something we think we want. So another good example, again, is the influencer online. They're in great shape, they're beautiful, they're whatever. They've got maybe something that you want or an element of it. And they're talking about a product or a system or a technique. And the way that they frame it, using their example, you start to put yourself in their shoes and think, oh, okay, I would kind of like to experience that. But when you sort of try it, your expectation is malaligned because you're using a system or a product or a technique through that individual's experience. So it's really important. Like, even if we're talking something about as simple as, should I take creatine? It's like, right, Harry's taking creatine because he does this, he's doing that, he's training for this. Like, am I doing the same things? Should I expect the same result? If not, you need to critically think, like, why would I take this thing? What are my goals? What am I willing to do? Am I willing to change my methods? Are my goals changing? So being well thought through, pragmatic, thinking critically is really important. And that's not to say you don't do something, but you're trying to get to the thing that you should do and waste less time and money.
Making sure that it's coherent and effective for you rather than using somebody else's experience. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Ben, I can't believe...
And just to say, if you can't get to the bottom of what that is, just try it anyway.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't know. And the process of just doing something to move down the road and get on the journey is the way to, get further down the road. It's like someone might have got a personal trainer and had a bad experience. That doesn't make all personal trainers bad. you just had a bad experience. It's sometimes the same with the product. You might buy a product, doesn't make the actual compound bad. You might have just bought a product. So sometimes if you're in a world of unknown, I would implore you to try something because it will at least move you further forward.
Love it. That's a great point there. In terms of, I want to just cast us back a little bit now, because we are coming up to the end point of the podcast where I will ask my 2 traditional 100% questions. But in terms of the book, How to Live an Awesome Life, if we've got a listener on here or listening to us today or watching us today on YouTube that's like, oh, really interested in Ben, I want to find out more about him and his book, what person will that book be relevant for? Is it somebody that wants to become a better version of themselves?
Yes. Someone that feels that there's somewhere some friction in their life. They feel like they could do more and they could be more. So the first half of my book is a journey to breaking down your current belief systems, who you think you are, what you want to achieve. So I tell a lot of stories about how I've kind of like almost broken myself down into the different areas that I've been trying to work on and improve, and then kind of start to rebuild a sense of self and a sense of what I want to achieve with my life through various different proactive techniques. So the book actually asks you to write a lot down in the book. There's a lot of like exercises, so to speak, and I think that's really powerful and important to do. And then the second half of the book is like a 11-step process to building you back up again. So we're like, right, this is you. We're going to break it all down, and then we're going to start to talk about sleep, so you perform well. We're going to start to talk about your nutrition, your hydration, how you organize your life. So it's a book of 2 halves, and I feel that makes it very powerful and life-changing for people, because you don't just pile information into a bucket that feels very empty, or, you know, that maybe tip that upside down, overflowing, overwhelmed. We kind of break it all down, simplify things, get people calm and, you know, widen their perspective on who they are and what they want to achieve, and then give them the tools to actually physically achieve it.
Insane. I love it. And I will read that book by the end of this year, 100%. In terms of nutrition, which of course again is one of your expertise, or an area that you have expertise in, I would normally ask at this point of the question, what are the 3 things that would bring you to be your 100% self? But we did that at the start of the episode, essentially. So I've thought of a new one. To become awesome cognitively, or to become 100% cognitively and physically, what are the 3 things that you believe people should be including within their nutrition to improve their performance, how they think, and of course, how they perform on a day-to-day basis?
So a higher protein diet, that's inadvertently going to stabilize your blood sugar for longer, make you feel fuller for longer. And the chances are you'll probably eat a bit lower carb. I generally find that anyone that wants better cognitive performance should err on the side of eating lower carb. You've got less risk of fluctuating your blood glucose too much, which is not good for cognitive performance. The second thing has to be healthy fats, focused on omega-3 primarily, and then monounsaturated fat. And that's largely because we don't get enough in our diet. And the research around the cognitive benefits of omega-3 it literally just makes it a no-brainer. Like, everyone should be supplementing with omega-3. So omega-3, olive oil, olives, avocado, nuts, seeds, like healthy fats, very good for the brain. And then thirdly would be highly rich antioxidant foods like berries. Think of anything dark or with a lot of color. So like berries, sweet potatoes that have a lot of antioxidants, polyphenols, bioflavonoids, carotenoids, etc. All like really important. So those 3.
Incredible. Ben, we're going to move on to the traditional 2 questions that finish up the 100% podcast. The first one is, what is next for Ben Coomber and Awesome Supplements and his awesome life?
Yeah, new products, innovation in supplements. Very excited about what I'm developing and designing, and how that's going to help people. A new and freshly invigorated self in getting out there and doing podcasts again, and like spreading a message and putting out good content, because I've largely been sort of not hidden, but within the shell for a good couple of years now, and I'm ready to kick the door down. So yeah, those 2 things.
maturing like a good bottle of wine, mate. And the final question for the podcast, get you to think on your feet here, is what is the greatest bit of advice you've ever been given?
Get good mentors.
Good mentors.
You're not ever, you're always going to progress more when you've got great people around you. And I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh, but that costs money. And it's like, imagine if you just said, I'm willing to spend £50 a month and I'm going to budget it out of my salary, £50 a month to one session with a great coach. And I'm going to find the best coach I can for the money that I'm going to spend. And that 1 hour will constantly, and it should constantly challenge you, make you grow, make you think differently. And there was a good part of my life where I didn't do this enough in the way that I should have done it, because I had too much ego wrapped up in some areas of my life. And I wish I had, because I knew I probably wouldn't have got to a state where I've burnt out and all the rest of it. But hindsight's a beautiful thing. And actually, as a result of it, I've become a better human all round. So I'm grateful for kind of like the journey. But yeah, great guides. Like, you think of an athlete has a team around them. Mindset coach, nutrition coach, training coach. You want to be an awesome human? Get good people on your team.
Love it. Completely agree. Ben, where can people come and find your book? Where can they listen to your podcast? I know it was a long time ago that you recorded, but where can they go find it? And where can they come out, and where can they come and follow you on social media?
Yeah, so the podcast, I don't know, it ended like a year or 18 months ago. All the shows are, still there on YouTube and iTunes and stuff. That's just called Ben Coomber Radio. Otherwise, I'm Ben Coomber all over social media. My book is on Amazon and Audible. It's called How to Live an Awesome Life. And if anyone wants to have a look at awesome supplements, we are awesomesupplements.co.uk. And if you use the code BEN10, you'll be able to get 10% off to try us.
Perfect. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Genuinely has made the 150th episode incredibly special and awesome and 100%. Honestly, I'm going to take this moment to just say thank you to everybody who supported the show up to this point, to 150 episodes. It has meant a lot to have all of your support, your comments. Craig, my designer. Scott, my editor as well, who has been working insanely hard to get me fired up and motivated to make my content on YouTube as well. But this has been the 150th episode. If you have enjoyed the episode with me and Ben today, please go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and drop a 5-star review. It goes a long, long way to helping the show. And if you are watching on YouTube, hello, like and subscribe below, drop a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you here with a new episode every Friday. Take care.